In this video, we strive to remain spoiler-free, discussing only story and plot elements from the books relevant to what has occurred already on the show. When necessary, a spoiler warning with a countdown will be given.
I'm Max.
And I'm the Geeky Hippie. Welcome back to WoT the Adaptation, YouTube show that reviews adaptations from one form to another for you. This week we have a returning guest. Jim, how have you been?
I've been great. Busy. But yeah, been doing well, and I'm glad to be back with you guys.
Can you remind the viewers what your channel is that you have?
My son Zach and I have Fantasy for the Ages. We are a show that talks about all sorts of fantasy, science fiction, and nerdy stuff we feel like talking about. We do a deep dive through the Wheel of Time. That's one track of what we do, but then we cover everything, including The Witcher. We've done episodes on The Witcher. Not at the adaptation where it's at now. It's a little older with that. But yeah, all sorts of things out there. Come find us. Fantasy for the Ages, YouTube. Where you can find podcasts too if you just want to listen. But really, our faces, it's much more entertaining.
Look for them in the cards. It'll be up above. As you can tell, we're talking about The Witcher Season 3. Max, what can you tell us about this episode?
Well, it's obviously episode 2, Unbound, directed by Stefan Surgic, written by Tanya Lotia. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. They are known for 2019 Swamp Thing and two episodes of Carnival Row. Otherwise, it's Witcher and Blood Origins Witcher. In this episode of The Witcher, Yennefer and Ciri bond over who has the most traumatic backstory. Dandelion opens his big mouth, and Geralt gets a helping hand or two or three.
Oh, too soon, man. Yeah. I've skipped over that sequence after the 3 times I've watched it. I watched it once and then fast forward.
I was scared when Max started doing the brief synopsis, though, because there's a lot of crap that happens in this episode. And yeah, well done. Tiniest little snippet there. Well done. Because that could have been 15 minutes right there.
Mm-hmm. Max has been getting pretty good at these. So what'd you gentlemen think of this week's episode?
You could probably guess my favorite part of the episode.
Which? The monster?
Yeah.
Yeah, the body parts monster was pretty wicked looking.
Yeah.
A little bit too wicked looking for me.
Originally, this was my least favorite episode. But when I watched it again and pondered it, and yes, I've watched all 5 that are out, so that gives a little context too. I really enjoyed this episode then. It's a little chaotic. There's a lot going on in this episode. So many different things that we're getting caught up on, or seeds that are being planted for the next few episodes. So it was a little chaotic the first time, but benefited from a second watch.
I ended up watching it twice, once this morning with kids in the ear, a second time later, and I didn't catch that the drunk scene was a certain magician or sorceress.
Oh.
I would completely, I wasn't realize who that was. They could play to not recognize her. Until
I caught that.
The scene with the other guy that was involved with her last season.
The problem with you mages?
Mm-hmm. Well, no, not that. Well, that, but the other guy.
Oh, you mean the scene with Kay here?
Yeah.
The Kay here and Gallatin.
When he mentioned that, I was like, oh, I know that guy. Yeah. And he mentioned him and the whole, what he did.
See, it's obvious what Fringilla's up to, but exactly what is Kay here doing? I wasn't quite really sure. He's out there in the middle of the woods at night by himself fighting a bunch of Nordlings.
They're both on death missions.
Apparently. I just don't know how that happened, but
she sentenced to drink herself to death, and he sentenced to be, killed by biting to death eventually.
I guess so. So, where are we going to start, Max?
Well, the first question of the night: of all the changes from the source material, what are some you enjoyed and what are some you disliked?
would you go first? There's one thing I dislike right off the bat. I don't like the fact that they have teddy bears. Jaskier refers to these monsters they have little faces like little teddy bears. And I'm like, teddy bears is a very specifically 20th century American invention.
Totally.
Or maybe, yeah. And it just, I'm a little hesitant to like that line. Of all the things they could have said they had faces like, why did they pick teddy bears and cause me consternation that way?
It's alternate history.
I mean, it's possible they could also have teddy bears. It's possible.
I mean, it's alternate history. Teddy Roosevelt could have been in at some point in time.
Could be a different Teddy.
Yeah.
There's a change though. I really liked having Jaskier along for the ride, going to Codringer and Fen. Just, to have that added, interaction there. I like Codringer and Fen a lot in the books and on the show. I think there's some of my favorite scenes overall. It's just a brilliant piece of world building, to throw this pair, these lawyers or investigators, whatever their title is, into the world. It just, it's interesting, I think.
Most of the little adaptation changes that were apparent in this episode don't bother me. They're fine. They don't make me go, yes, either. They're just, okay, you're still telling the story with little tweaks, little nuances, and it's fine. But there's one that bugs me. And I know not everybody's going to feel this way, but the way they're clearly making Jaskier and Prince Radovid to have sparks between each other. That is not true to the books, and I didn't need that. I love Jaskier being such a ladies' man in the books.
Right.
It's very clear. He's not interested in guys. He's a ladies' man.
We don't see him interested in guys in them. At first I was like, wait, what? And then I'm like, well, there's nothing in the book that excludes it from being a possibility that I could see. It's just, it wasn't something that was included in the book. Now, I'm not saying that in the books he was bi or pansexual, but I don't see it as beyond, the possibility. And he's not the first LGBT character, even in this episode. The bartender right at the beginning wanted Yennefer to idle on up around her.
But it is a very intentional decision that the show has made to make Jaskier pansexual. And
it has pissed off.
You can say there's nothing in the books that say he isn't, but there's certainly nothing that says he is.
Right.
And plenty of evidence to just suggest the dude's into girls. Okay. That's the book. That's the character they give us. So if it added something to the show by doing this, I'd be like, okay, but I don't know yet.
To kind of work into that, we find that the prince is a lot more sly than we would first anticipate.
I like the prince.
He's not the blithering idiot that you would first assume.
Nope.
And we got that basically at the end of the episode. And that kind of leads you to believe that, he is purposely wooing, so to speak, Jaskier more than meets the eye. It's maybe not so much as more to get information, at least for episode 2, than for anything else. He's trying to.
I read it that you're right. He wants to use Jaskier, so he's going to get close to him.
Yeah.
But he's also a little gaga-eyed about him. It's I think genuinely this is fun that he gets the opportunity to get close to this guy.
He's using him in multiple ways.
That's right. He's using him with benefits.
Yes. Obviously the book cloaks will find multiple avenues for the woke agenda in this episode. You have the blacksmith who made various comments, regarding their wife. So that's going to be a whole theme in this episode. I couldn't remember if the flesh monster had any bearing in the book. I was like, I couldn't remember. I don't remember if it was in the game or not.
Yeah, I don't remember it in the book at all.
In the
No.
video game, I don't recall if it was in there, but I'm 100% positive I killed this monster in one of the Elden Ring or Dark Souls games.
It's a great monster, though. Ugh. And the fact you've got the monster, and then you've got the heads over here.
Oh,
That was almost my background, but I couldn't find a clear enough screenshot that I was happy with. That's why.
I mean, even if it's not
Plus, I
from
knew it might disturb people.
even if it's not from like say Elden Ring or Dark Souls or something like that, it could have been easily from Dead Space, which is another video game. You have The Thing, which is a horror movie.
Oh yeah.
So there's lots of
It looks
inspiration for it.
it looks like something out of the movie Event Horizon.
The what?
The movie Event Horizon.
Oh yeah,
Lawrence
that's another good
Fishburne's-
call. Yeah.
Yeah, the video that they saw, the video that recorded when the ship went into the black hole to transfer universes.
Mhm.
Horrible stuff body horror was happening on that video, and this reminds me of that.
In parts I'm trying to struggle like where this connects to the book, so it's like hard to figure out what's changed versus what's staying true. I definitely picked up on the detectives, like where that kind of fits in. You know, I don't recall the mansion scene with Geralt investigating, but that could have been something. But it's just, kind of drawing blanks.
Yeah,
They kind of like pick and choose random spots that they're kind of adapting. It's like, where is this?
there's only a couple of sequences or scenes that have any direct parallels to the book. Applegat, the messenger, mostly it's just him running into Ciri and Yennefer, and then nothing else of Applegat is there, except just his presence. And then the stuff at Codringer and Fens, and from what I can see, that was it. And that didn't even include Jaskier in the book or Dandelion in the book. So
I seem to recall like last season being, what was it? Mildly disappointed with Fenn's scene, like I needed more and they didn't give us more. But I can't really recall how like last season how they just missed us on that.
Right. Vaguely,
and
I don't really remember. I do know we met Fenn earlier than we would have in the books.
Yeah.
Because this sequence here, this trip to Codringer and Fenn's in the book, because I was just listening to it, that's when Geralt meets Fenn for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
He actually thought Fenn was a fiction, was made up. So.
But other than that, I didn't mind any of the changes they made. It just kind of is what it is. They have made a lot of changes since the beginning of the series to now, and I don't mind what I'm seeing right now so far.
And I think it keeps getting, since last episode and this episode, I think it keeps getting closer to the book than further away from the book.
They seem to have a target in mind that they're aiming the ship at that is very rooted in the book. So yeah, I think you're describing it well. They have to move this
they're
closer
steering
in
the
line.
ship towards a certain island, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps.
It reminds me, did we the fake Ciri, was that a thing in the book?
Yes, not this early though.
Okay. I couldn't remember if that was a book
early.
thing or a game thing. I can't remember how we discussed that again.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. Neither you or Jen could remember if fake Ciri was in the game or not.
Okay. I can't remember which way that was going. My brain is just mush on that right now.
To be fair, the books kind of jump around a little too, so it's hard to keep things straight exactly.
Yeah,
I couldn't have told you exactly where fake Ciri came in, but I knew, fake Ciri. Yes, I remember that. Because
I seem to recall Fenn and them discussing about fake Ciri either in the show or the books. I can't remember which one it originated from. That's why I was like, which one? So like seeing it pop up again, I was like, okay, they kind of stuck to that. And I couldn't remember if that was from the books both or just then.
Yeah, it's from both. And in this one, maybe not this episode, but in the next episode or two, we'll actually get a name for this girl. Unlike in the books, we never, ever, ever get a name for faux Ciri. Which, no matter how hard people try, they couldn't get a real name out of her. So, got to give the kid props on that. But yeah, most of the changes, I think they're inconsequential. There's the significant one. We'll see how it plays out with, Jaskier, Dandelian's sexuality. Hopefully that works out for, that it has some purpose, towards the end. I'd really love to hear how Andrei Sapkowski feels about what they did with Jaskier on the show. His input would be really interesting to hear.
Does he even like the show to begin with, or?
He's said he likes the show, but
my understanding is he hates the game. So,
well, I don't know about the games. I just know he was really angry they made the third game when they weren't supposed to.
My understanding is he hates the games because he sold the rights pretty cheaply back then, and they did a lot better than he expected.
Yeah.
So he's not getting more money off of it.
Note to authors: you sell an adaptation rights, always go for points on the back end. Always. That's where the money's at. There wasn't anything that I particularly hated, except for the teddy bears, and that could just be a translation problem. Like it's like in a fantasy novel having somebody refer to an Achilles tendon or their Achilles heel. That's the word we use for it in English. Obviously, they wouldn't use it there, but
right, unless they had the same exact Greek history. But what?
Right. What's next, Max?
Well, question 2 is, how well do they interpret the appearance, the nature of costumes, props, scenery, and creatures, both practical and VFX, and how did you enjoy the music?
Music was there for me as always, especially I'm never going to get tired of that oboe theme motif for Yennefer. Just every theme for her just hits the notes just perfect for me. Everything else looked great. I just don't like looking at that body parts monster.
The monster.
Every other monster this season, but this one.
The effects on this monster were actually a little weak, just a little bit, when you looked at the heads. They were a little funky, but the creature itself was cool.
It's gonna be always a little
tricky. When they were looking straight on at the camera, they just kind of a little bit of a fuzz to it.
Yes.
There was a bit of a green screen effect Glenn pointed out the other day regarding the background in Yennefer and Ciri in the field, that we couldn't quite sure if it was green screen or just a focus effect they were doing where they're making the background look blurry. It's hard to tell if it's a bad green screen or just a auto focus issue.
It's the shot when Yen and Ciri get to the field where Yen's house used to be, and she turns to Ciri and is like, "This is where I used to live," or something like that. It was before they did the handhold thing and saw the vision. But it's as she turns to look at Ciri that it's like, wow. I'll share the picture up here on screen and you'll see what I mean.
And it's hard to tell because it is a green field, which, implies like maybe it's just a bad green screen. But it could just be an instance of autofocus where you're doing that focus trick where the people are closer to the camera, they're in sharp focus, and the background's blurry, and it just makes it look like a bad green screen effect. And it just seems a little bit off, and it could be because their costumes are 2 different colors. And that can impact how the focus does everything else. I mean, usually when you have a photographer, they have like one subject or maybe 2 subjects, but they're not that far apart or whatever. Like something is not right there and the colors are messing everything up, or maybe they reshot it at a different date. We have no idea.
That was my guess, is that it was a pickup shot at a later date and they couldn't go back to the location, so they used the green screen with background
billion different reasons.
The shot,
billion different reasons. It just something a little bit off. I love the monster. I would love to revisit it in like 10 years to see how those graphics held up. Like, oh god, those don't look anything like the monsters outside. It's not believable. No. Don't look anything like that flesh monster down the street that took away our neighbor.
And it's like zombie butts. Reminds me of zombie butts from the Doom Patrol TV show. Yeah. Oh, those are scary.
Can't think of anything else. Honestly, I didn't even notice the music this episode.
I pay a lot of attention to the Witcher music because I listen to it. I've downloaded it all from YouTube and I've been listening to it as I fall asleep at night.
Or
there is one issue I can note with almost forgot about this, with Yennefer's shirt in this episode, and it's the same shirt she's wearing in the last episode. My wife pointed this out to me. She's got a print on that wouldn't have really worked with the textiles of that time. It's too modern. That struck her, and I went, I wouldn't have thought of that. But she knows sewing and stuff, and I went,
Right.
You have a point. Okay.
Well,
I mean,
and
Philip
I'm
was
gonna
leaving
go
her
back.
feathers everywhere.
Yeah, she was. I'm going to kind of go against my whole issue with teddy bears and pointing out that this is, in theory, sort of like in our distant future where our Earth got part of the conjunction of the spheres and people from our world went over there, because they do have a lot of scientific ideas that you wouldn't have found in our real world medieval society. Like the idea of genetic engineering that they talk a lot about in Season of Storms, at least. So it is feasibly possible there was some carryover tech. Unlikely, I don't know what, I don't know how recent it would have taken to be able to do a print like that, a textile like that. I don't know textiles, but I'll trust your wife's statement that it was anachronistic. But in theory, it could also be perfectly in line if the idea that this is our distant future on another world. The idea that the books have, give. So who knows? I'll have to look for that. I'll have to check out that textile. All right, where are we up to next?
Question 3. What is a scene or sequence you most remembered, enjoyed, and or hated?
What you got there, Jim?
Well, of course, we've talked about it already. I enjoyed the monster and that battle scene there, but I'm gonna go with a different episode, a different instance that I really enjoyed, and that was when Ciri chose to save the slave, to interject there, leading to Yennefer having to kill the one trying to sell the slave, and then this whole explanation she has to go into on your actions having consequences, and the way that it leads them to bond in a new way. But just that instant of Ciri having to act on her vision when earlier she didn't, she held off because Yennefer told her, and this time she just does, and that was a good moment. That was a good scene.
Yeah, I like seeing Ciri act on her convictions, but then having to deal with learn that your consequences are what matter. And that's a lesson that, listening to her give that speech, it made me think back to recently when Bill and I have been reading the Earthsea books by Ursula Le Guin. And the Earthsea stuff, sorcerers and wizards, one of their most important lessons is learning the consequences of their actions. And that doing things leads to consequences that you have to, so knowing when to act and when not to act, based on what consequences are going to come out, is something sorcerers have to learn there. And I think it's neat that they have to learn the same thing on the continent as well. Just thematically, it ties into another book that I've recently read, and I'm like, I like that.
Yeah. It ties into an old debate argument that many have had. If time travel was real and you could go back in time, would you kill baby Hitler? And everybody's like, well, of course. Yeah, but it could lead to something even worse than what happened. You don't know. So you have to be very careful. And this is what Ciri has to learn. You can't just act on impulse with the information a vision gives her, because you don't know what else might happen because you try to change one little thing.
Yeah. I think that's an important lesson everybody needs to learn, even in the real world. Is thinking through what you do to see what kind of reactions it's going to cause.
Yeah, I just know I can't have fucked up too bad because no one's come back in time to stop me. So,
well, they probably did, but it caused a new timeline. That's why the whole idea that you can prove that time travel doesn't exist because Hitler lived. Well, he lived in our timeline, but when you go back in time to kill Hitler, you start a branch. But that's getting some funky cosmology that I'll talk to you any day, but not this, because that would take forever. My favorite scene, sequence of scenes, it's just a couple of scenes, is, I mentioned them earlier, everything at Codringer and Fenn. They're fun. Was it Simon Callow and Liz Carr, I believe the names are, of the two actors? They've been great in the role. I hate to see them go. I hate.
We didn't really see them go. We heard them go.
Yeah, and if you're watching the subtitles, they ignored that. You only hear the fire. You don't hear an ominous music. You don't hear the screams, or you don't see
screams.
The screams referred to.
I heard subtitles say screams.
I didn't. I'll have to watch again. I also kind of really like that scene with Emir, the Emperor at the Dwarven Smith shop. His whole interaction with her, getting the new sword. That's a beautiful piece too. That's one thing that their props and costumes on this show are just amazing.
Yep.
I'd love to go through like a museum display, a gallery display of items, props, and costumes from this show.
You gotta wonder when it's over, some of these actresses are gonna like being able to keep some of these wonderful props. Will Henry Cavill walk off with something at the end of this season?
He probably already has a suit at home.
He should be allowed to keep his Witcher medallion. That he should be able to keep.
I guarantee you he has the suit at home.
Yeah, the costume.
Yeah,
definitely.
So for me, aside from the monster scene that Glenn just hates, I'm going to toss in any scene with Dandelion. And the in scene with the prince, and who's just, being addicted to Dijkstra at the end there.
Addicted
Dijkstra, yep. Just love that last interaction between those two.
Yeah, he leans over, grabs his food off his plate, right in his face. I love that.
That was a good little bit.
Made him feel like an idiot after, they're just bad-mouthing him about being this idiot. Just kind of worked.
Apparently, Vizimir's not as much of a witless fool as he comes off, but that's all he's ever come off as.
Not convinced still.
Yeah, Vizimir's kind of an idiot.
The show Radovid, I can believe, is smart. Book Radovid, well, it's not so much Book Radovid, it's Game Radovid is an evil SOB. When he inherits the throne in the game, when I've read a lot of the Witcher wiki, the wiki for Witcher, and it combines the game, the show, and the books all in one wiki, and it can get a little confusing of what's canon to what at times. But
I have in terms of wit, I'm not sure between Vizimir and Lord Farquaad who has the best.
I like that.
Who would win a wit contest?
Good question.
More whether Geralt would fight Shrek, I don't know.
No, he'd let Shrek go. I can
Shrek's
tell
a good guy.
But they both have their donkey.
Jaskier?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a longer word for what Jaskier is.
And they would both have a dragon if they could.
Wouldn't you? I'd
probably.
I'd love to have a dragon. Especially if it was tame or at least obeyed me.
I don't know if you know how Shrek's donkey had a dragon. No.
No, I've only seen the one Shrek movie.
No.
Boom chicka chicka boom boom.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, they had babies. It wasn't fun.
I'm trying to think if there was any scene that I really. It's not so much the monster scene; it's the monster itself that just. Yeah,
Which is kind of what they were going for, though. So they succeeded with
Exactly.
you.
I don't think there's really any scene that I disliked enough to say that I hated it. I thought there was quite a bit of funniness to this episode. I loved how Fringilla escaped. I just think that was great. You know, I'm still trying to puzzle out the logistics of how she got into this sack, tied herself up without the other drinkers noticing, and then, you know, had them throw her by the door. I don't know how that worked. The guard comes in and not notices she's missing, and there's a guy. I don't know, but it was still funny regardless.
Considering you haven't watched Shameless, that's why I'm seeing a blackout drunk. You just appear in random places.
Okay.
It just happens.
This escape was straight out of the classic novel, The Count of Monte Cristo. And that's how he gets
Really?
out of the impossible prison. He gets in a shroud with another dead body, and they dump him out.
Because
Yeah,
I've never read the book. I watched the movie, the Gerard Depardieu movie, years and years and years ago, and I think I came in like half an hour late. So I would have missed that. And so, yeah, cool. That is cool that they stole from that or borrowed. You know, in art you always borrow. When you do it blatantly, it's borrowing.
I think that works
how-
considering all the fairy tales were borrowed into this.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh, especially the first season. The first two, the short story anthologies. I love how, you know, Radovid asks, you know, early on when Jaskier shows up at his suite, he says, you know, I want you to play a pretty song, and Jaskier's like, I don't do pretty. You know, I don't do pretty songs. And then the last piece of music we hear Jaskier playing was that little love piece. That was actually a pretty song. You know, at least I thought it was. It's like, Jaskier, what's this about you not doing pretty? Huh? Say again? Such a great character. I don't have, yeah, that's all I have for scenes.
That's all I got.
All right, well, I'll go right into question 4. How well written was dialogue? Did it adapt dialogue from the books, and did the actors deliver those lines well?
A lot of the Codringer Fen stuff is straight out of the books. I mean, some of it's slightly paraphrased, but I'd say on that they did a pretty good job. What would you say, Jim?
I didn't see anything that pulled me out as that doesn't work, that doesn't fit. It all seemed fairly natural, and I do particularly still enjoy Henry Cavill, the grunts, the Witcher-ness that comes throughout this episode as well. He so channels the Witcher, especially the Witcher we see in the video games, which he loves. Right. You know, he's bringing it out, and that still was very fitting, very good. Max, what about you?
Let's see, can't think of anything offhand that you guys haven't already said. Let's see.
Have you still not watched past this current episode?
No.
Max?
No.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, as far as I can tell, the actors delivered lines well, and aside from, like you said about Fed, I can't think of anything from the books that I can think of aside from Henry's grunts. Maybe a lack of swearing or not enough, I'm not sure. Or too much, one or the other.
There was a paucity of swearing in this episode. It was a little light on that compared to normal. I think I heard one F-bomb the entire episode, and that was the hunter, the guy that Yennefer killed there at Kira Metz's. Well, I'm assuming that's Kira Metz. We just know her name's Kira. but at the portal, the wizard portal place. Yeah, that's all I got there. Move on to the next one.
Sure. Question 5. Who would you call the best or worst actor in this episode, and or best or worst casting? And you can choose up to 3.
I'll let you gentlemen go.
You know, for some, you've had defaults. Like when we did The Expanse, there were certain ones that were always, come on, Henry Cavill always has to be a default here. Isn't that true?
Sometimes it's a little too easy, the role he's playing at times. But I mean, I can see why you would say him.
I'm just gonna go Hugh Skinner as Prince Radovid.
Yeah, you do like that character, don't you? You've been liking it since last week. It's a good character. I think mine for me would either be a toss up between Yen or Joey Beatty. You know, Anya Chalotra as Yennefer, or Joey Beatty as always as Dandelion, Jaskier, Buttercup, whatever you want to call him. And I do love that they call him Jaskier, which is his Polish name.
Yep. I have on my screen this one on purpose. Every time Graham McTavish shows up as Dykstra, I'm like, yes, I want more. He plays this role so well.
He's good.
And yeah, and Max, you haven't watched the next 3 episodes yet,
Correct.
but you're gonna love him.
How do you like the first scene with him this episode?
I've liked every scene with him. So,
but worst actor, there wasn't one in this episode, except maybe the girls who just did the face of the monster heads. You know, actually, the mystery girl, the one who looks vaguely like Ciri, Ciri.
She acts just like Ciri in season 1 or 2 or whatever we first met her.
Season 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, she might be the worst acting in this episode. At least her fit that she was having there in the cave just kind of seemed a little forced. I don't know.
But it's such a little bit we get of her. It's hard to judge.
So here's a question for you. Do you think that she has a hidden head somewhere in that cave, just like those monsters?
Nope, but I think she was about to be. I think she was not too far.
Different.
Possibly. It's definitely possible. I mean, she could. We might be sticking with this actress for a while too. You know, because there is definite story use for a fake Ciri. Obviously, we've talked about it.
What? No.
Yeah, there's a fake Ciri, but you don't know who has the fake Ciri. So we're not going to tell you that. What are we up to next, Max? If we don't have anything more on actors?
I said the prince, and I think you guys all said actors. So after that's themes. All right. Question 6. Of the themes present in this episode, which ones caught your attention? What do you think about those themes? Are they relevant to the books or to the events happening in real life? I mean, I am constantly worried about flesh monsters roaming the streets.
My neighborhood
stealing our cats
is filled with them. I think my neighborhood has a lot of flesh monsters.
I mean, open your closet, flesh monster.
Yeah. I mean, most of them only have 2 arms and 2 legs and 1 head, but occasionally you find one with more limbs.
Open an Amazon box, flesh monster.
Yeah, tell me about it. So,
well, I introduced a theme earlier. I can bring it back now. Get us on track here. And that's the theme that Yennefer and Ciri explore a bit in this episode, that actions have consequences that go far beyond our intentions. You may have the best of intention, but if you don't think through what all might result before you act, you can cause such horrific ramifications. So sometimes you got to act anyways, even though you know there's going to be some blowback, some bad circumstance. You know, the greater good may require you to act that way anyway, but it's not just as easy as, I see that's wrong, I'm going to fix it. So that was definitely a theme here in this episode.
Thinking back when I, described the episode, one of the first things I said was Yennefer and Ciri are bonding this episode, particularly about who had the worst trauma in their life, because that's a thing people do. We have Jaskier and the Prince kind of bonding in their own way. We have various bonding exercises this episode with the Fen and Geralt and all of them kind of doing their little bonding experience. And just throughout the episode, kind of various bonding experiences, especially with Dijkstra and Philippa. I think it was, or is it? Yeah, Philippa. We have
that bonding.
Yeah. Of a sort. We have trying to think of her name.
Just thinking about it.
Let's see, what's her name? The other sorceress. The other sorceress. Yeah. We have the drinking one.
Tesha?
Fringilla.
Yeah, we have her kind of bonding in that room with the guy that dies. And everybody else in that room.
Well, he might have just been totally passed out drunk, but yeah, it didn't seem like
no, he died.
I think
That's why they were taking him out.
In theory.
We have trying to think what the other guy's name. The one that Yennefer rescued from beheading. Bonding with bonding with your favorite elf guy.
Skeleton's fun, but not my favorite.
They're kind of doing their bonding exercises. And of course, Geralt's bonding with six-limbed flesh monster in his own special way.
Yeah.
Well, the flesh monster has a bonding of its own that's already gone on quite clearly.
Yeah.
For an episode with so much bonding, it's kind of ironic that it's called Unbound.
Mm-hmm. And I can't, forget Rayanne's bonded with a cat.
Yeah, I that is the one where the cat got out of there.
He had a new friend.
An only friend. Who's going to be Firefucker's friend? Come on. Nobody. I still think that's the best name for him. And that's not even in the book. That's entirely from the show, isn't it? Wasn't that just Yennefer on the show calling him that?
Yeah, it's not from the book.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Wouldn't translate from Polish well.
Well, the F-bomb does get dropped a lot in the books, that's for sure.
Other themes we got a little espionage again going on, especially with beginning of the episode. I believe we still have some stuff with Yennefer and her whole spy network kind of thing going on. She has a keyword of ragamuffin where she gets through some locked doors to meet her whole spy network of other people she knows. We have the whole Jaskier thing with the prince and all his information going on. His spies who kind of knew exactly where Jaskier was the whole time with Fens. We have a lot going on.
When she was asked for the password to get into the rest of the bazaar, did it make sense why I brought up that last week? The
Vaguely.
Safe word for the orgy sheet when Geralt first met her. Ragamuffin was the word that canceled the spell, the charm spell that was on. And so when she used it as the password here, I'm like, hey, I recognize that.
Oh, more bonding. The Amir and the dwarf lady.
Yeah.
So yeah. But like I said, there's several little things. We had the racism thing with the one guy that Yennefer kills regarding these blade
With
he
the
had with the
dwarf.
dwarf,
The dwarf child.
which is a constant throughout the series for obvious reasons.
You know,
That's about
it's
all I
his
got.
It's his big axe to grind. I think is racism, and othering of people. Because it's not just it's not just the non-humans that people are after. It's they don't like the wizards and the sorceresses, the enchantresses.
Well, you heard what they
games.
said about the reason why Yennefer looks young is she bathes in human blood, according to the one guy.
Every day, yeah.
Which
Why
makes
she looks so
no
beautiful.
sense considering where does she get this blood from?
It's stupid prejudice that it's just pervasive everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Characters that would otherwise be cool, all of a sudden you see that they're bigoted against wizards. I was happy to see Applegat, because Applegat in the book has this nice chapter, where we see this little vignettes and he runs into these other characters in sequences. He has a near miss with Geralt, when there's the monster that was killed on the road. He almost was there when Geralt killed it. He actually meets Geralt once in the book and one of the inns. It just, and then we get him to be like twice as old, a lot bigger of a guy, and now he's a bigot too. So Applegat was quite different than in the book, but I was still happy that they included Applegat. Just wish we'd seen the elves. I thought it would have been neat to see the elf lady that was with Philibandrel back in something more End of the World back in season 1. The elf lady that Geralt broke her nose that wanted to kill him because she's one of the ones there in the book. She's one of the elves, the Scoia'tael that's there. Applegat gets killed. Any other themes from you guys? I picked up on deception, and that ties in. That can tie in with the, what Fringilla's escape. And I'd like to point out, she was the one who said, "We have another one. We have a dead guy here." She's the one who told the guards that he was dead. The guard didn't bother checking, so I think that could easily be a deception on her part as well. But also putting herself in the sack to do the Count of Monte Cristo escape. Radovid and Vizimir, wow, combined names there. Radovid and Vizimir both pretending to be witless. If that's the case, I think Vizimir is doing a much better job at it because I have yet to see a scene with him where he seemed like anything but an idiot. Codringer and Fen both knew that Geralt has Ciri, that he's protecting Ciri, but they also know who's looking for Ciri. And going by what Codringer says to Riance, it sounds like they know not just who's looking for Ciri, but why and what they plan to do with her. Are the fireworks
information was their thing.
It's probably you.
Do you guys hear the fireworks? Are they annoying? Okay.
I haven't noticed.
All right. Love was a theme, at least in relation to one character. Both Vilgefortz and Yennefer loved Tissaia. At least Vilgefortz says he loves Tissaia. You never know on a TV show like this. Ciri, Yen, Fringilla, and the girls at the Wizard's Castle all had one major thing in common. They have no control over their own life, or at least they faced a period of their life where they had no control over it. Yennefer's youth, it was all about trying to gain control over her life, both when she was back on the farm and then, when she was at Aretuza. We talked about learning that there's consequences to our actions. That's a theme that can be seen. And tying into a couple weeks ago and into a couple months from now, We've got prescience or foretelling.
Mhm.
Depending on whether you're talking Dune or Wheel of Time, or here it's just seeing the future, having visions. With Ciri, at least, that's a theme that's going to run constantly throughout the season, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, she makes a comment during one of those scenes. What's the good of being able to see the future if I can't change it? So that ties into the theme.
Yeah, and that's trying to gain control over one's life too. And that's exactly what she's trying to do all the time. What she does the rest of this season. No spoilers. Any other thoughts or themes or comments or anything else you gentlemen wanted to bring up? Any notes you might have had?
Only that I wish the monsters looked as good this season as it did the first season.
Except for the dragon.
If they look this good now, back in the first season, and it improved from there. It was great.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
The Kikamura in the first episode was good. I think a lot of that was puppetry, though. A lot of the Kikamura was puppet. The Deoval, or the Sylvan, it was called the Fawn, that did look kind of bad. Everybody thinks the dragons universally painted.
Yeah.
What other monsters did we have in season 1? The Striga.
There's a payoff between practical and CGI, and Netflix just has not mastered that. And their budget really went to say Stranger Things in that department. Whoever's in Stranger Things, go to those guys for your monster budget. Don't go with whoever you got now.
And I still have yet to bother with season 4 of Stranger Things.
Oh my goodness.
Is it worth
season
watching?
4 is great. Season 4 is great.
And
yes.
Seriously, if it's not your CGI guys, it's your artists or something, because
there's monsters on this show a lot of the monsters look a lot alike. And I brought it up last week. I think part of the problem I have with it is there's not a lot of this in the monsters on this show. The monsters, with a couple of exceptions, have almost all, and that's counting what's coming in the next few episodes, are all monochromatic. Jim will know what the wyvern that we see just look terrible. Wyverns should have some kind of color to it other than black, all mono black.
Darks and grays, and that's kind of the theme of the world of The Witcher, though. It really is. There's a lot of just
be dark and gritty and edgy, man. Come on.
But it doesn't mean all
the monsters are goth. They're all goth. Okay,
definitely.
Just because you're gritty and gray themed doesn't mean your color palette has to be the same.
They're trying to be Game of Thrones, man.
Yeah.
So
I was disappointed when that show came out that the color palette was muted.
I don't know if you
for Lannister.
I don't know if you're familiar with the Diablo 3 controversy.
No.
But so when Diablo 2 came out, it was a very bloody-ish game back in 99. It had very dark tones and blood and all that stuff. And the third game came out, and oh god, there's a rainbow. Woo! People are mad. It had a rainbow.
Wow.
And Diablo 4, they got mad they overcorrected into the dark spectrum. So now you can't see shit. So now you can't
know yet because they didn't roll out a Mac edition yet. So I can't touch
the best way I can explain it is now you can't tell the monsters apart from everything else because they all kind of blend in together, because they don't use any different color. They're all kind of blend in together. It's all the same color. It's all dark, muted, dark. The blood's all dark. The blood's, everything's dark. So they overcorrected. That's kind of what colors. And that's kind of what's going on. So you have this Game of Thrones dark aesthetic because HBO's always had this dark aesthetic. That was HBO's thing. And Netflix and even Amazon is trying to emulate the HBO dark aesthetic. And you get this overcorrection, which if you can't pull off, you just get blah. You know, they have Stranger Things, which can pull it off, but it's its own style. It's unique.
It's like, I remember a lot of people weren't happy with Man of Steel because of, you know, one of the big complaints was the color palette. It was just so muted. You know, that was the least of my complaints with that movie. I'll admit that's probably, in my opinion, the best of the DCEU movies that Zack Snyder had his hands in. I am not a Snyder fan, folks. Sorry. Respect the man, but I don't like his movies. You know? But see, unlike a lot of people out in the fandom, I can respect the man and not like his art. You know, a lot of people aren't capable of doing that, unfortunately, and will say horrible things about people who make art that they don't like, you know, and I'm not going to say horrible things about Zack Snyder. I have nothing horrible to say about it.
You know, kind of going back to The Witcher, though, that the Witcher universe is on the dark, gritty side. And it would have been interesting to see an HBO version of The Witcher. Because, like, thinking like Deadwood and Witcher, like, ooh, that could have been interesting.
I can't imagine the cast would have been too different. The casting they would have made a lot of the same choices casting, but visually, I think they would have looked a lot different. Would have looked a lot better, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
but see, you could still have splashes of color, you know, in wildlife, in banners and flags. The best change the show has done is changing from first season to current armor with the Nilfgaard. The Nilfgaard armor in season 1 was just, that was bad. That was bad.
So that's another thing with like HBO is like their head producer guys actually know what they're doing. When they interfere, they make things better. When they interfere, they make things typically better. You know,
and HBO itself maybe, but not the parent company.
Correct.
Warner Brothers.
You know, when we were just discussing Game of Thrones is a prime example of that. The showrunners had no idea what they were doing until, you know, they had direct interference from the HBO network.
Yeah, the pilot episode, the originally shot pilot episode is notoriously bad.
Yeah.
And I think like a third of the cast got recasted.
But and like I said, Netflix, like even Amazon, you have the head execs and producers don't know what they're doing. Whereas the directors and writers know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But you have interference from the higher ups that don't know what they're doing. And that always causes issues. And same thing with NBC, any of those always have that same issue. Historically, every network's had that issue. The execs, producers never know what they're doing. That's why you get Mecha Spider trying to eat Spider Superman and never became a movie until recently.
I think we've had a nice little chat here, guys. Thank you, Jim, as always, for coming on. It's good to talk with something other than The Expanse with you. This is our first.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot of sci-fi. Now somebody else who's read all the books too. So I can chat with you off camera, off recording, and on Discord and all that about stuff that's going on. Because Jen hasn't watched all 5 episodes yet. She's the other person I know who's read all the books. And I'm like, do you see what they're doing? It's like, I see what they're doing. And it just, they're being smart this season. I really do.
I'm excited for the second half of the season because I see what they're doing.
6, 7, and 8 are going to be great. Especially where they left off that cliffhanger at the end of episode 5. I've been harping about what's coming up at the end of this season since season 1, when I had finally read all the books, and I was just like, it's one of those biggest moments, turning points in a fantasy series that I could think of. With just, I mean, Jordan does it better, obviously, But I think Sapkowski does it on par with what George R. Martin did with The Song of Ice and Fire. You know,
It's a huge, yeah.
Yeah, it all is just so big. This book series is just not given as much credit as it deserves. It shot up into my top 10 and then my top 5 on my second read. It's now my number 4 favorite series of all time.
Wow.
So yeah, the Wheel of Time just barely beats it out, to be honest. I love the Wheel of Time to death. It's been my internet life since the mid 90s, but this
Wait, so
series
Wheel of Time is only your third best, if I'm doing the math right. What are your top 2?
The Commonwealth Saga by Peter F. Hamilton, and that includes
I haven't read that
the
yet.
original.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the sci-fi series that I suggested to you, and that's got two series that set in the same universe that I count as part of it. Number 2 is The Lord of the Rings with The Hobbit and Silmarillion. And then Wheel of Time, and then The Witcher. Offhand, I don't remember what I put down for 5, but A Song of Ice and Fire moved way down the list in the last decade or so.
Have you read Malazan yet?
3 of them. I'm waiting for you to be ready to read book 4, and then I'll pick up book 4 and read it at the same time as you.
The first 3, but man, this is rising way up in my faves. I don't know where it's going to end, but this is just mind-blowingly excellent epic fantasy.
It is. And it's also emotionally devastating.
Yeah.
Memories.
Yeah.
I've never been more emotionally devastated after Memories of Ice. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, next week we're going to be talking episode 303. What's the title, Max?
Reunion.
Hope to see you guys return next week. Thanks for watching, and give us a like and a subscribe, and don't forget to be awesome.